Hi, this is Lisa. I'm the community manager for Blogger, and today we'll be doing another series, or another part of our series, Blogger Hangouts on Air. And today we have a tutorial for you about RSS feeds. A lot of you probably are familiar with RSS feeds, but today David Kutcher, who's been one of our presenters in the past, will give you a more in-depth look into RSS feeds and how you can actually use them to create some interesting custom feeds on your blog. The goal, of course, is to maximize the amount of ways that other people can see your blog, see when you update posts, and in general, if you're putting the effort into, making sure your blog is updated, you want to make sure other people know about it as well, because that's really important to just giving the idea that you have an active blog. That tends to be one of the most important factors in whether or not someone keeps following your blog and stays interested in it. So David, it's been a while since we've done a Hangout with you. Do you want to give a little bit of a background into what you do and also talk a little bit about what we're going to be going over today?
Sure. So my name's David Kutcher. I own a web development firm in Western Massachusetts. And we've, I guess no longer recently, but we've been doing a lot of websites for clients using Blogger and really kind of, in our minds, pushing the envelope of what can be done and finding new and interesting ways to use Blogger to make very interactive and interesting websites. So every time we do a new website, we're learning all kinds of new tips and tricks and posting them and sharing them. And that's how I've met you, is through these kind of new and interesting things that we think we're doing. And you and I were talking, or Lisa and I were talking about all kinds of interesting things we can do. And I realized that we use a lot of RSS feeds for a lot of the underlying technology and tricks that we were doing on the website, but not in the conventional sense. So we started talking about how we could talk about this to an audience. And one of our recent discussions was maybe we should take a step back and go into RSS feeds a little bit and then kind of segue into, well, how can you manipulate them in your website? Is that a good starting point?
Yeah,
so,
I think.
Okay, so RSS feeds, most people are familiar with them in terms of using RSS feeds through RSS readers, whereby if there's a website or blog that you want to follow and be notified anytime someone posts a new article or there's a new update, that rather than having to go to that website, you're notified that there's a new article, and maybe you'll see the headline and you can click through and read the article or read a short snippet of the article before you even go there. That's how most people are familiar with RSS feeds. RSS feeds are structured data that is created by your website automatically in a way that's easily managed and manipulated. So for example, every blog in Blogger creates an RSS feed automatically. Your RSS feed is comprised of things like your the title of your most recent post, the date and time it was published, the author who published that article, the contents of that article, so on and so forth. So all this content is packaged into this feed that allows you to syndicate your content to other places. With that same information, you can do all kinds of things. So if you're following along through Google+, I just posted two links to articles we've written that are created by Blogger. So if you click through that link, you'll see there's a number of options. So every Blogger site creates a number of different RSS feeds that you can access. One is considered your full site feed. So basically every time you post an article, it's added to this full site RSS feed. The second one is a comments only. So anytime someone posts a comment, you can get a feed of all the comments that have ever been posted to your website. The third is a label-specific feed. So for example, if you give a post or a number of posts in your website the label tips and tricks, you can actually pull up a feed of just tips and tricks articles that you've published to your blog. And the fourth is you can actually do a feed of all the posts in your website that have multiple labels. So for example, let's say you want all the posts that have tips and tricks and are food related. I don't know why that would ever come up, but let's say you want to do a combination search. You can get a feed of all the posts in your site that have those 2 or more labels. So using this information, you can actually manipulate it and bring it back into your site in different ways. Jumping ahead, one of the things you can do is when you create a site, you can use another property of Google's called FeedBurner. FeedBurner is a system that allows you to manipulate your feed, but also provides you with tools such as BuzzBoost, which allows you to republish it as HTML back into your blog or other sites. Another is you can allow people to sign up for email updates. So for example, if you've ever done or used the email subscription widget in your blog, that's coming from Google's FeedBurner service. So basically what it's doing is it's grabbing your feed and emailing it to people who have subscribed to get your feed. Another thing is you can actually attach it to Twitter also with using the socialize buttons within FeedBurner. So actually I can screen share this really quickly if I can figure out how again. 1 second. So you should be seeing my FeedBurner where you can do BuzzBoost, which allows you to simply grab HTML code that you can put into a Google page, a Blogger page, or a Blogger post as HTML, and it will automatically get the most recent articles from your blog. And you can customize that to some extent right here. So this is how you can reintegrate RSS feeds back into your site. So one of the examples is within our blog, we pull back RSS feed of articles having RFP as a label and re-show them in this static page within our blog. So this is actually republished content from our own blog which we're on as HTML. So this is just a simple way that you can reintegrate content, structured content, by showing a subset of content on a specific page. If I'm going fast, you can stop me or ask questions along the way. One of the things that I wanted to show was this doesn't have to just look like a list of articles. One of the things we've also done is, for example, for Pinch Gallery, you can transform your RSS feed into a slideshow. For example, the featured in-store slideshow up here, where what we're doing is we're going to be grabbing the first 7 articles, seven most recent posts that have the label of artist, and we're then processing them into this slideshow. We're getting the first photograph from the blog post, we're getting the title of the blog post, a short description from that blog post, and to continue reading, and we're transforming that RSS feed into this slideshow. On the same page, we're also now getting a subset of blog posts and creating this news and events section down here where it's getting the 3 most recent news and events blog posts from the same blog. So this is how you can basically reintegrate content from your site, segment it, and basically transform into new and unique uses of that same content, but reintegrating it back into that website. So
I was actually just going to say that we're, for people who are really interested in creating a slideshow, we're actually going to do that in a separate Hangout. So David's going to provide some, I think you're going to create some sample code that he'll be sharing, and you will be able to learn how to tweak it a bit to fit it to your needs and your, for example, your Picasa album. So look out for that if you guys are interested in that.
Yeah, we were talking. We figured that was jumping way into the deep end without kind of the primer of both what RSS feeds are, but also how to start manipulating them. So let's see. if there's any questions, Lisa, just let me know if there's any questions in the...
Okay, I'm going to go look on our page and see if there's anything. I'll be back.
All right. At the same time, so one of the second link I posted to that to the Google Plus page was the page about using jQuery to process a Blogger feed. In there, I discuss both what I'm attempting to do in the code, but also I post the code, and if you want to view along, you can see it where it says the code, download a clean version of the code here. What we're doing in this code is we're using a language called jQuery, which is a JavaScript library that's pretty commonplace these days and kind of everywhere. And what we're using is that to take the RSS feed from your site or a subset of your RSS feed and turn it into a more interesting dynamic usage of it. So if you're able to pull up the code, please do so. What we're doing is, and if you can, click on that link, you'll see code, and a lot of this, some of this, the part of it comes from a Google tutorial on how to grab these feeds. But then what we're doing is we're using that to parse it out to get the different aspects of each entry, such as the ID number, the URL, the title, the content of the post, the date of the post. And what we're doing is we're grabbing those different elements, we're manipulating those different elements, and then we're reinserting them into a ordered or unordered list. That might have gone over the heads of lots of people there. The ordered or unordered lists are basically when you do a numbered list or a bullet pointed list. The idea being that anytime you're getting a subset of information, in this case, the most recent 4 articles, those are really list items. So you should always just treat them as list items. You can then stylize those list items however you want using cascading style sheets or CSS. But the idea is let's keep it in that structured format. In this way, you can kind of create everything. And let me show you just a basic example. This is one of my demo pages. But in this one, you'll see where I'm grabbing the custom feed output. So what I did was I simply just grabbed the RSS feed automatically created by this website and reparsed it. So you'll see that I created into an ordered list comprised of a title, which is linked, a thumbnail of the one image that's in the article, the first image, and a short structured blurb and the date. This content is simply coming from what I've done here, which is simply parsing that feed into that structure. So basically you'll see where I'm creating a list item, adding a title one, which is the title of the blog post, turning it into a link. Then if there's an image, adding the image into it. And then if there's a blurb, adding the blurb. And then adding the date. And I know I just went really, really fast. But you can study this code to your heart's delight later. But this is just to give you kind of an idea of how you can grab that same content and parse it out. So if you wanted to, you could manipulate this whole section however you saw fit to kind of create what you wanted to use and borrow what you wanted from that feed and show it however you want. At the same time, up in the top of this same script, I've left all kinds of notes for how you can kind of structure your variables, such as you can set the number of entries that you wanted, the date format that you want to use, where you want to target it, whether you want to use image thumbnails or not, the size of those thumbnails, etc., etc. So this is all customizable. It's all something that you can borrow from and use to do whatever you'd like. But the idea of kind of this was to set a starting point for how you can basically reuse your RSS feeds to kind of create something new and unique without having to borrow someone else's widget and still using the content from your own website. So, sorry about the noise outside. Give me 1 second for one more thing. Wow, that's tough. Regardless, so let's say you wanted to create a new page. If that code that I just posted is too complex for you, don't worry, there's other ways to get around it. One is you can simply create a blank page in your post, switch to the HTML tab, and then using FeedBurner, you can actually just grab this content, this HTML code, and post it right back into the HTML version. And if you hit preview, you've just brought a feedback from your own website or a different website and integrated it back into your website. At the same time, you could grab the HTML code that I posted. You have to grab the whole thing, post it in there, and let's see if I can grab a default log. Sorry, I'm going a little fast right there. And do something very similar. That's not going to work that way. Sorry about that. Let's see if it does it that way. May or may not work this way directly. If I give it a name, sorry.
Hazards of a live demo.
Yeah, that's what happens with a live demo. But essentially that's what you would do, except it does actually work better if you put it into your template and not into a Google page.
Mm-hmm.
So otherwise it would work.
Right. Okay, cool.
But yeah, those are different ways we can kind of bring it back in. And then, like I said, with the Pinch Gallery one, you know, these are two examples of what you can kind of do with those feeds. And at the same time, it's not just Blogger websites that create these feeds, but every Google product actually creates these feeds. So you could actually go to a Picasa album, grab an RSS feed from your Picasa album, and process it the exact same way. So one of the websites I'm working on right now, and I can see if I can bring it up real quick. What we're doing is we're actually using a Picasa album, the RSS feed from it, to generate a live slideshow. And what this allows us to do is allows us to make it so that all someone needs to do is drop a new image into their Picasa album, and the slideshow on their web page automatically updates. So let's see if I can bring it up real quick. So in this case, this is a not yet completed website. This slideshow up in the header is being processed by code very similar to the one that I just showed you that you can download, and it's automatically grabbing both the background images and the captions right here from this Picasa album. And it's doing it using the RSS feed that's provided right here. All it's doing is reparsing it and bringing that same content using RSS back into your website in a new and unique way.
Cool. I just wanted to mention someone, Frank, left a comment. He says, "Thanks for discussing this difficult subject. We all need this, but the how-to is quite daunting for non-technical people." Yeah, so do you have any advice for someone who maybe have never really touched their HTML before? Like, what are some good ways to think about this process to, you know, for it not to think of it as being quite so daunting?
The best way, honestly, that I found is to tinker. To grab the code, maybe set up a test blog. You know, just set up a blog for yourself to play around with, to test new things. And it's what I do personally. I mean, I create a test blog. I put in some dummy posts, make sure it's on private, so only you're seeing it. But then I start tinkering with the code to see what's going to happen. Grab the code from my website, from the links that I just put in there, and try manipulating it and seeing what happens and what doesn't happen. Play around with it, to be honest with you. Yeah, it's pretty jumping into the deep end if you've never done HTML before and never done JavaScript. But you make a backup, you tinker, you see what worked and what didn't work, and keep on playing around with it, to be honest with you. That's what I do. I changed one thing, I hit save, I see what happens if it didn't work the way I thought it was going to work. And then if I break something, I go back to the previous version and see what I did wrong. But that's kind of the beauty of it. And if you ever have questions using any of the code that I've ever written, that I've posted on our website, ask questions. I try to put in as many comments as possible, but if something doesn't make sense, just ask.
Yeah, I think also maybe the issue is for some the jargon might be kind of technical, so like they might not understand certain things that people who are used to working with HTML take for granted. So I would say in general, like I'm not a super technical person myself. I'm familiar with Blogger because that's the product I work on, but I wouldn't consider myself someone who can just pick up super technical things very easily. And what David mentioned about just creating a test blog, I think is probably the best thing you can do, because it's not going to affect your current blog. You can always do everything you need on that test blog, and by changing one thing at a time, you'll quickly realize what works and what doesn't work. The worst thing you can do is like go make a bunch of changes and then find out that it doesn't work. So doing it incrementally.
And making backups. Don't forget to make backups along the way. If you've got something working, make a backup and say, this is a saved backup. And then you go from there. So you have a working copy and a backup copy. That's assuming you don't have any kind of version control going on, but make backups. And then leave notes for yourself. That's what I do. I mean, as I go through, if I'm looking at someone else's code, leave notes for yourself and say, okay, this is what this does. And then if you don't understand what it does, tinker with it or look it up. And just keep on moving forward. I mean, you have to have kind of a, I'm not going to say auto mechanic mentality, but little things do things, and you might not understand what they do initially, so you keep on working on it.
Cool. I think that pretty much covers it. I don't see any other questions for you. Hopefully other people will discover this, because I feel like RSS feed is something that unless you've heard of it somewhere, it's not something as a blogger a lot of bloggers pay attention to. So I hope that this has been really useful for me, hearing it for the first time. And as I mentioned, we will have a follow-up hangout where David will actually go more in depth about how to, for example, take your Picasa album and turn that into a cool slideshow for your blog. So yeah, David, thank you so much again.
My pleasure. And like I said, if you guys have any questions, leave comments or visit those 2 blog posts that I've linked and comment there. I'm happy to help.
Cool. Yeah, and definitely follow David's blog, because it's always being updated and has lots of great tips and tricks for bloggers who want to take their blog to the next level.
Thanks.
Awesome. All right. Well, that's it for today. We'll see you guys next time.
Take care.